hot water heater that's about to break down, and man, I haven't been stopped worrying about my hot water heater ever since. What I want to talk about has to do with sexuality. Is that something we want to talk about? You sure you want to talk
Okay.
about that? Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about it from a completely Buddhist perspective, which is not much to it.
Well, I want to talk about it from my perspective, and then you can shoot me down. In my perspective, so first of all, I think that the world is kind of divided between sexually active persons and non-sexually active persons, and
No, actually, the world is divided between idiots and non idiots. 99.9% idiots and 0.01% non idiots. And all
uh,
those that are, they're, um, all of the idiots are the ones who are sexually active, either
oh
mentally
my.
or
Uh,
otherwise.
so that's the end of that discussion. That, so I'm automatically in the idiot camp since I am sexually active.
All right. Don't get offended when I use the word idiot.
Oh, why would I?
All right.
Well, of course I'm offended. What do you mean? Don't be offended. I
Oh,
don't want to
some,
think that. I
go
don't think
ahead.
that I want. I don't want to think that I'm an idiot.
Well, then don't.
But so for me, it turns out that my root guru from back in the day uh, was sexually active, and that he was sexually active with his senior male students. And at least at one point, it's not clear whether he considered part of his sexual, whether part of his spirituality. But um, I saw this as a bright line between the connection of spirituality and sexuality, and I think that especially Vajrayana Buddhism makes a lot out of the imagery of interpenetration and the yab yum of and the very root mantra of Om Mani Padme Hum speaks to the interpenetration of male and female. So for me, I've spent a lot of time entertaining a sexualized notion of Buddhism and Vajrayana and spirituality. And I personally feel that I feel very connected through sexuality, but it's not something that I think it's also very problematic because the Vajrayana um, lamas have seriously compromised their integrity by taking advantage and demonizing women. Uh, and by its very name, Vajrayana, uh, Vajrayana is a patriarchy, and it's created in my mind uh, a void in the space by virtue of not having a matriarchal equivalent. And so I think that the Dalai Lama he needs to have an equivalent female spiritual leader. But I find that and also it happens that the Sangha that I walked away from, um, the Lama was sexually active with his female students, and I I took offense to that. That I think it put. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Vajrayana, and you're not here to defend Vajrayana. But I wanted to put on the table that, in my humble opinion, that it's hard for me to relate to the open Sangha here because this question of sexuality has not been adequately vetted in my mind.
You're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you do that for us.
Well, I've already been characterized as an idiot by virtue of my my sexuality. And, you know, I'm not about to renounce my sexuality for the benefit of the open Sangha. As much as I love you and the boys.
Oh, well, we've got, from time to time, we've had quite a number of women. We've got, the funny thing is that most of them are named Anna. We've got Anna Sis, and we've got Anna, the psychologist in New York, and we've got Anna, who is, um, she's in Mexico, and we've got another Anna. I forgot where she was. We've had Dr. Susan. We've had many, many different women on. Let's say Rachel and
Deidre?
hmm?
Deidre?
Deidre, yes, Deidre. So we're up past 10 there for you. At one time, we didn't have 10 guys, so I don't see any issue there at all. As far as those who have been teaching the Dhamma, welcome and hello, DJ.
Glad to see you. Glad to see
DJ
everyone.
was one of the first teachers, but Anna and yeah, mostly Anna has been doing teaching. What Mikey calls seasoned teachers. I call them well marinated. So, is that what you mean by an issue here on the everybody is welcome? I would say that in fact there's very few qualifications. One of the qualifications would be English, but that's not even a major qualification. That normally people find their own reasons for not being part of the group rather than the group having boundaries. I don't see much of any boundaries. DJ, do you see any kind of those boundaries?
No. Wide open to anybody who has ears to hear.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Dhammadas. You're also one of our seasoned teachers. Glad to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Do you see any boundaries that we put on sexuality? We've had quite a number of people who have, let us say, been shy about their sexual confusions. A number of people have been gay. I don't think that we've had any what they would call lesbians, but if she didn't tell me, I didn't know. But some have, let us say, shared, and that's no boundary here. Generally, the boundaries have to do with the guilt within the mind of the student. But by the time the Sangha is formed, those boundaries don't really exist. Does that answer that part of the question to you, Eric?
It puts me at ease, but it doesn't necessarily give me the kind of well, I'm not sure what to say. I'm listening. I want to. I don't know that much about the how the open Sangha works. I'm kind of peripherally attached.
Doesn't. We're pretty lazy here. But I hear that you've been involved with Buddhist groups that have had issues with sexuality. Um, let's talk about it from the perspective of the various groups and countries and whatnot like that. And I'll start off with Thailand. I have heard stories of monks. This was all basically in Bangkok, but I guess it could happen within any city. Small towns, it wouldn't happen so much, but some monks, especially newly ordained monks, would have clothing set aside so that late at night they could put that clothing on. And the joke generally is that they'll get a wig. And so with Western or not lay person's clothing and a wig, they would go out and find a prostitute and then sneak back into the temple before sunrise. That's normally how it would happen here in Thailand. However, there's also been stories of monks who have been, let us say, gay, and that they would be, two of them would hook up, find each other, and that they would have a relationship that nobody knew about. But that's possibly could happen. In fact, it's probably quite common, but never spoken about in public. The Buddha put uh, big boundaries between men and women. And for that reason, let us say, right down to the kind of building. The question is whether the Pali word is translated as roof or ceiling. If you have the word roof, then that means that they have to be in completely separate building altogether. And if you use the word roof, that would mean that they would be located in separate partitions of the same building, but they would always be separated. Generally, the women who become ordained bhikkhunis care a whole lot more about not getting entangled sexually than the men do. And for that reason, the likelihood of a relationship between a bhikkhuni and a monk is very, very low. There's also other little or lesser rules, and that is that a monk and a woman should not be alone together. An example of that is if they're in an office working, the door to the office should be open. More than that, there should be at least 3 people in the office. That even with an open door, you'll have gossip. Also, traveling together. I remember when I was in London. I had been staying at Amaravati, and that one of the Thai families that had a Thai restaurant in London actually had an open apartment. And in that apartment, people would come and go, but monks in transit would spend the night there. And that some lay people would also become involved. And there was this one old woman who wanted to take me to visit in downtown London. Let's see, they've got some museums there. I remember they had a lot of old artifacts about Egypt. So the Londoners had stolen a lot of Egyptian stuff and brought it to this museum. Does anybody know which big museum there is in London?
The British Museum.
Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, so this woman gets a taxi and puts me in it and takes me to London. And weeks, if not months later, I'm in Bangkok visiting a friend of mine, a German monk at Wat Mahatat, and he mentions that story got all over the place. That even he had heard that I had gotten as a monk in a taxi cab with a woman, because we're not supposed to travel together, not even in a larger group. I've also seen Achan Po tell women more than on one occasion that they were at Wat Suan Mok and they wanted to go to the retreat center, International Dhamma Hermitage, and Achan Po would point the way and say, "I will see you there," but decline allowing the woman to go with him in the transportation that the Thai man had set up for him. No, the woman's not going to ride in the same truck that I'm in. This was done for not even have a hint of impropriety. And boy, did I hear about my impropriety. It had gotten all the way back to Bangkok. So this is the situation, is that there are strict boundaries about monks around women in general, and that the bhikkhunis have even stricter rules about being around men. Why? Well, the reason for it is not because of the transgressions of the monks and the nuns. The problem is yakety yakety gossip, which is what you've been involved with. And so, Eric, it's your situation that is the problem, not any sexuality with the monks and the nuns. It's that lay people, they know about these rules, especially in Thailand, and that they'd make a great big deal about it. Now, as far as bhikkhunis and bhikkhus being at different status and different levels, that also is within the mind of the lay people. But there are quite a number of bhikkhuni wats all over the world, and that people gain great value by going there. When I was a monk in the United States, and I think it was in Greenville, South Carolina, there were two Western bhikkhunis that stayed there. The building was provided by one of the wealthy men who was Sri Lankan. Fast forward more than 20 years, and Sudama, who was one of the nuns at the there in either Greenville or Spartanburg, I forget which. She now has a house in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's in fact where her family was from. Her mother was in Charlotte. And she's got a thriving community there. And in fact, in Charlotte's a fairly big city, and that there are at least 3 Lao Wats, at least 2 Cambodian Wats, at least 3 Vietnamese Wats, and with her, a Sri Lankan Wat. And that they very rarely mix with her, though they mix with each other. I remember, in fact, on one occasion where she and I were involved with some ceremonies. I think it was a Tibetan group that was bringing around a whole bunch of relics. They had big cases full of relics that they would put on display, and that they would take those to various wats for show, and they would be on display for about a week or so. And that the first time that this happened was at the wat in the Vietnamese wat, and she and I, Theravada, were involved with that. I remember specifically she and I were chanting over some relic or whatever, some Buddha's tooth or something. And so there is some interaction like that for very, very big ceremonies. But in general, when I would go to visit her, I would come mid-morning, stay for lunch, and then in the afternoon would leave, would not be there long enough to have any possibility of being there past sundown. Why? Because of idle chatter, or maybe vicious chatter.
Well, see, if I may say, what you've done here is you've identified yourself as, again, along the lines of the two types of people in the world, the sexually active and the sexually non-active. It seems that what you're saying here is that all these monks, for the sake of appearances, have refrained from any notion of sexual interaction for the greater good of the Sangha. And my point is that, okay, if you folks are sexually inactive and sexually disinterested, that's fine for you. But I think it's abnormal. I think that humans are inherently sexual beings, and that there needs to be a separate universe, a parallel universe that accommodates sexual Buddhists. And I think
That's called lay people. Then, in fact, within that group, there are, okay, let's go through it. There are those who have no precepts. There's no ceremony at all. Then there are ceremonies where people will take the 5 precepts. That if a monk actually disrobes in a ceremony, at the end of the ceremony, there's also a re-ordination ceremony of him taking on the 5 precepts. And the 5 precepts there have, let's say, if I can remember, I remember the one of Brahmacharya is substituted for not having any sexual misconduct. And then there is the 8th preceptor, which changes that word from not having any sexual misconduct to a brahmacharya, which means we live like the gods, and that that actually does then require and keep away from the sexuality. These are both lay people. And then there is a 3rd lay ordination that is normally referred to as anagorika, or a 10 preceptor, which also doesn't generally handle money. And so there's these 3 levels of lay ordination, and that most of the people who go to the temple would actually be 5 preceptors if they're attending the wat on a regular basis. There would be opportunity, but in fact, generally every Sunday morning, they recite the precepts. And when the precepts are recited, people could just see that as a ceremony. But if they take it seriously, they're actually pledging to keep the 5 precepts. which means then that they're not going to be, let us say, messing around, which would be what we would call Western society. That in Thailand it would be considered, or in Buddhist communities, that would be considered staying with one partner, but definitely not having relationships with someone else's partner. And so there are various levels of sexuality within the Buddhist community. And when one ordains as a monk, uh, they would also be taking on that precept of a brahmacharya, which means that they're refraining from sexual activity. So, Lars, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to comment. So Eric was saying that, what he was saying there. I think monasticism is very common the world over. But also, like, some people, when you think, well, it's normal to be sexual. Some people are really obsessed with sex, and from what I understand from the conservative side of Vajrayana, is that you should try to refrain. In one aspect is to try to refrain, so that, for instance, when I was younger with my girlfriend, I would possibly only be involved with her in that manner like once every 3 months, or sometimes only in the summer. And she would always think that I must be, not cheating on her because I wasn't that interested in her. But the truth is, I was just following tantric practices that I had understood, and I was, refraining from that. But it wasn't like it wasn't complete. But it was a restrained thing, and that was my impression from Vajrayana, which is kind of a peculiar type of Buddhist thing, or Eastern religion type tantric stuff. It's very controversial and type of thing. But all I know is some stuff I read from books that kind of made sense to me.
That's right, Lars. I have read also some of those same books. I think, in fact, the word tantra
Yeah,
is used. Uh, uh, is that it? Tantra Buddhism, where
tantric. Yeah,
sexuality is used as part of the path. I would say that hmm, I do know that I have heard the phrase while I was in India of from sex to superconsciousness, which means that they practice sex, but then they come out of the sex because it, uh, uh, let us say that while you're having lustful thoughts, you want something. And that when you're practicing correctly, you're in a state of not wanting anything. Uh, And so you also made the point, Lars, that it's common all over the world. That in fact, you could say that one of the worst aspects of uh, evangelical Christianity is that they have dropped that quality of being a priest or being a monk or a nun that the Catholics had. And that the same thing is true with Islam, that only a few of the imams, mullahs, will drop sex until old age. Now, that's one thing that you can see in the West is things like Cialis and Viagra and whatnot, is elderly men especially want to stay sexually active when the equipment gets tired and old. Now, when you get a car that's tired and old, you normally put it in your front yard if you're from South Carolina and just let it sit there and rot. And that this is what's been happening all over the world for many, many centuries is that when someone gets old, they become disinterested in sex, partly because the equipment itself doesn't function the way that it did. When you're 80 years old, the likelihood of waking up in the middle of the night with a heart on is very, very, very unusual. I don't know if you guys are old enough to recognize that, but the point then is that within the monastic tradition, when we become less interested in going out and dating and putting on makeup and getting our clothing ready and all of that kind of stuff because we're not full of desire that way, then sexuality doesn't mean what it did before. And with those cautionary rules, those boundaries or whatever like that, people will just say, out with it. Now, as far as practice goes, first thing to say is that most animals, specifically dogs and cats, are not highly sexual. That there's something about the human being that is highly sexual. There's also a few uh, primates that are highly sexual, but most primates are not highly sexual, even though their pride or their troop is based around, let us say, the top gorilla having all of the females there, and the young males get chased away until the old gorilla goes away, and then there's bedlam. And then there is the monkeys, I think it's bonobos, that whenever there is a conflict, it's almost always resolved through sexual intercourse. And I think that humans are basically like that too. In fact, I have seen and heard of women starting a fight just so that they can get laid in an hour or two. So, we could then say then that in most of the animal world, sexuality is natural, and it's also normally not much to it. Dogs, for instance, only are interested in it when the female is in heat, but when she is, wow, the whole neighborhood knows it. And you know that they know it because they're all in your front yard. And so uh, when the female is no longer in heat, there's nothing to it. However, with human beings, sexuality seems to be a full-time sort of thing. Another thing like that with cows, in order to get milk from a cow, you got to get her pregnant. And then when she's calved, much of the milk is taken by the farmer, and some of the milk is given to the calf. Either that or the calf winds up on the menu. However, with female humans, it seems like that the breast size is something that has to do with sexuality. I don't know why, but it does. And that many women will go for breast implantments, which means they put the silicone on the inside, but historically, they've just padded their bra to try to make themselves more sexually attractive. And part of that possibly has to do with that dogs, for instance, are very, very olfactory oriented. They're very, very interested in what something smells like, where humans are very visually oriented. And so we can see something at a distance and become sexually aroused. Where with the dogs, you've got to be right up close and personal in order to get the scent. So uh, this over sexuality, I would say, would be normal in humans, but it's not natural in the animal world. And this point, I think, seems to help some guys to understand that basically sexuality is a biological, it's an instinctual, they call it the procreation instinct, and that um, somehow or another, because of our human mind states, we've overly sexualized, that our whole society is far more sexualized than it needs to be. And that's possibly part of the reason why there are 7 going on 8, if not more, billion human beings on planet Earth, is because we're just too prolific. We got a whole lot more of us than the planet needs to support without having special farming equipment and all kinds of science to get enough food and transportation, etc., so that all of those extra human beings are not starving to death. Now, one of the things that we can also see is that the population is declining, birth rate is declining when the women start working. When they get a job, when they find something to do rather than staying home and taking care of a brood of kids, when they're corporate executives and whatnot, they become less interested in having children. And so the birth rate has declined in many places. It's below 2 now, which means that it's not sustainable. And the population starts to decrease, which many of us think is a good idea. South Korea, I hear, is the worst at about 1.3. Many, like the U.S., is at 1.7, something like that. And they say that it takes 2.1 on average to sustain the population. There is still something like 5 in Africa. That's the place that is still a lot of population, but the population has strongly declined in places like India and China because of the governmental policies. That in 1970s in India it was like 5 or 6 children. Now even India is below the population sustainability. It's down to like 1.9 or something like that. Now the point about all of this is that um, a lot of it has to do with birth control and medical science and whatnot like that. But in the old days, let us say back in the 19th century, having bachelors and spinsters was quite common. Now in China, they have a whole class of elderly women that's over the age of what, 25 or 30 or something like that, that have never gotten married and therefore are not marriage material anymore. So we want them young for some reason, and I think that that has to do again with biology. That even old men want young girls. Why is that? It's built in that they're more fertile. Also, we seem to want a girl because she's a virgin, and that the basis of that is that if a woman has had sex before, the likelihood of her having some sort of disease, sexually transmitted disease, is much, much higher. And that was true in the old days. And so virginity became much more of an issue for many centuries. But now that we have good medical science, that attitude has kind of fallen away. The likelihood of a guy finding a girl that's a virgin is quite remote nowadays. So, getting on with it, let's start talking about it in the sense of if it's a biological thing, it's an instinctual thing. The whole point about the teaching of the Buddha is let's start getting in charge of our instincts. because we also have an instinct. In fact, the primary instinct is the self-preservation instinct, and its primary point is fear. And there's a whole lot of fear built into sexuality. The fear of not getting laid, the fear of having children and dying in childbirth, the fear of getting caught. All kinds of fears that are associated with sexuality. And the one about the fear of getting caught seems to be the big one, as you had pointed out, Eric. And so, if we can see it that way, then we can begin to understand that we have some control over it beyond making a bunch of rules.
Well, I'm seeing the problem is very, very different than you.
Pardon?
I'm seeing the issue is very differently than you are.
All right.
To some degree, my sexuality in my marriage, because I am married to a wonderful woman, has a lot to do with understanding myself, my own femininity, and my past, for what's worth, my past lives as a female, and to try to integrate my relationship with the Almighty through my relationship with my female partner, who I experienced to be very complimentary to me and very different. You know, we you know, the notion that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, essentially different planets. I think there's a lot of merit to that. I'm so different, and I'm so incomplete without her. Now, this is not the kind of notion that self-sufficient, sexually abstinent monk wants to entertain. So that's why I feel very remote from you with regard to our perspectives, because you know your mentality towards this and my mentality are radically different.
Well, while that may be true, we still live on the same planet with women. That in fact, men are not from Mars and women are not from Venus. That's an attitude.
Yes, agreed. But
That's,
nonetheless, it's an attitude that has merit.
well, it has cultural background. It has a lot of cultural stereotypes built into it.
And for some reason, the women are not participating in this Sangha. And that's one reason why I'm not quite so interested myself, is because I want to be in a Sangha that has more women involved. What can we do to get the women to hang with us on Friday nights?
Well, as far as I know, they do. Just not in the same numbers.
Will all women present please say aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Nay. Blah.
Dhammarato, do you swing both ways, brother? I mean, this is a revelation I wasn't ready for. I'm. Do you ever feel feminine? I mean, do you feel somewhat attuned to feminine instinct? I think.
Well, you're talking about it in the sense of extremes. Swing was the word that you used. And another way of looking at it is not seeing much difference there. That you're
that's
talking
a good
about
point.
women from Venus and men are from Mars, and I just mentioned that, oh no, we're on the same planet. Here's an example of that is that right now we've got cats. I think they're male, but I'm not sure. We've had dogs that were female, but there's not much difference between dogs because the dogs don't teach their children how to be a male dog or how to be a female dog. That's not part of the culture. to where in our culture we've got boxes and stipulations and things like that, and that women normally fit the female gender. Girls learn to be girls from their moms, and boys learn to be men from their fathers. And that also one of the experiments is that when the population goes up in a fixed place, it's quite natural for some of the animals to have, let us say, mixed feelings, so that they will go to studies back in the 1960s was when a rat population gets too many, even if they're fed by the people, but they're in an enclosed space, the amount of sexuality, the genders get bent. And there's a lot of a very high degree of homosexuality then. But when you're, let us say, in a small town, the likelihood of gays is not high. That in fact, there are certain centers in the United States, one being San Francisco, another one being, I think it's St. Louis, that where the gays tend to congregate so that they can find people that are like them. But that the indigenous population for St. Louis was always having that gay element built into it. That's why it became kind of a hub, was because there was also a propensity for that. So one point is that if we can start to change our minds, the mindset that you are talking from, Eric, is a very, very common one. I would say almost everyone who talks to me would start off with that kind of a mindset. It's common within our culture. They've even written books about women from Mars, and no, the other way around. And so is Eric still here? Did he go? No, there he is. Okay, I see. The point then is that within spirituality we can come out of those extremes of men on one set and women on the other and come into a more balanced. An example of that is the husband and the wife see each other as partners. And
I do.
And that's the partnership is much more important than who's the man and who's the woman, that in fact the roles will often swap, so that the woman goes out and works and the man stays at home, or vice versa. That's exactly what we've got here in this house. And so the partnership is more important than who's the man of the house, and that's especially true within the Buddhist community, where the men, even laymen, are advised to stop holding their masculinity as being the boss and run the place, and allow the woman to run the place. This is actually in one of the suttas, number 31 in the Dinga Nikaya, where the Buddha recommends that the man allow his wife to take over and be the boss of the place, so that he can practice the Buddhist teachings of learning to do nothing. But always we have this quality of the middle path, and that when we are involved with sexuality, we almost always see ourselves at one extreme, looking for compliments on the other extreme. So very, very handsome men want very handsome women. Ugly men will take ugly women, because of the balance that's there. And that if we can see it this way, and that is that, oh, I like what I see, but I don't want it. But when we can see that, in fact, getting entangled with someone else that way could be a lot of dukkha. The example would be that when the monk starts having a girlfriend, it's going to be a lot of trouble for him. That, in fact, all men can see that women can be trouble. And so when we can see that we've got everything that we already need, then why get entangled with that other side? Because it's got often conflict built into it. And so we can, in fact, come out of our sexuality by coming to the middle place of everybody's the same, and I've got everything that I need. Yeah, she's a beautiful girl, but I don't want her. That, in fact, an old man like me chasing a young girl down the street is going to raise eyebrows everywhere.
Except
And
in
if I catch
Thailand.
her, it's really going to raise eyebrows.
You mentioned about learning to do nothing. Did you mention learning to do nothing?
Yes, yeah,
Could you talk more about that, please?
yeah. If you already have everything you need, then why are you out chasing more? For instance, if a man is married and he's happily married, why is he out chasing skirts? Why can't he sit at home and be happy with what he's got? If you've got $100 billion, why are you buying off of Donald Trump and trouncing all over the place trying to get 200 or $400 billion when you've already got a SpaceX and a Tesla and a Neuro something or another? You've already got everything you need. Why is it that we keep chasing more and more? Why can't we be satisfied with what we've already got? And so you can take that into the spiritual realm. Why can't we just be satisfied with how things are? But in fact, you could say that most activity is based upon wanting things that you don't have. And most of the activity other than that is trying to get rid of stuff that you don't want. So it's greed and ill will that actually cause most of our actions. That if you don't want anything, then you're very, very unlikely to go out and kill somebody to get it. If you don't want anything, there's no reason to go steal it. If you don't want anything, there's no reason to try to buy and sell and cheat and lie to get what you want when you don't want anything. And so this is why the Buddha talks about an action that brings the end of action. That we stop doing so much because we don't care so much anymore. So when our caring goes down and our joy goes up, our actions also kind of decrease. We become much easygoing. We're not out chasing stuff so much. An example of that is elderly people, they don't party like they do when they're young. Why are they partying when they're young? Is because they want something. They want entertainment. They want to experience. They want to play around. But when we already have all that we need, the likelihood of partying goes down. You'll be comfortable to have one or two guests over. That you can, in fact, Eric, you can see that in yourself, that you don't have nearly as much going on now as you did when you were 20.
That's right.
Well, part of the reason for that is because you have become a little bit more satisfied with what you've got.
That's right.
All right. So if we can do that with sexuality, for instance, that's one of the things that you could say almost worldwide in all the religions is to teach the young men to be satisfied with one woman, to get married and be satisfied with that. That most of the problems in the world is because one's not enough. We want more and more and more, and we're chasing it, and many times we're even after out starting wars. For instance, why can't Putin be satisfied with Moscow and Petersburg? Why does he want Kiev too? Why can't he be satisfied with what he's got? So that's I guess, a rhetorical question, because we know that he wants to start. He's starting a war. He's turned the whole world upside down because the people want something from Putin. Either they want him to win or they want him to lose. A lot of people are afraid of him and they want him to lose the war. But he wants to win, and he wants to win so badly that he'll destroy not only his own country, but Ukraine also. So this, at that global level, really applies, but the reality is that it applies to each one of us. That you'll never be happy so long as you're out chasing. And if when we can stop chasing either skirts or dollars or bitcoins or gold or whatever it is that we don't think that we've got enough of, so long as we're out chasing, we're not satisfied. So let's sit down and become satisfied with what we have.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Pardon?
Thank you. It's nice to chat, but an hour is about all I can take.
I think women are different, and I think women tend to be more liberal, and I'm a moderate. But I think if there's women are in control of things, it may tend to make everything shift to the left more, and I'm a moderate.
Well, moderation is in the middle. Moderation is, in fact, going towards the middle. DJ, do you have anything to say about this?
Moderation, gender. I have
Yeah,
a lot
all
to
of what we've been talking about. Eric's been...
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's interesting because in terms of moderation, gender, and all that stuff, I don't talk about this a lot, to be honest, but there was a lot.
As you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, well, especially like I don't know. I don't talk about it a lot here because I'm like, okay, there's such an opportunity to learn so much from the Dhamma, but I was I had a point where like I was really like, okay, I want to like transition. Actually, like that was like a big thing, and you know, I actually still might. I don't know. I'm gonna see where things go, but I realized something, which is that even whatever that feeling is, that like here, it's something that's like, you know, so beautiful or whatever, is nothing compared to the freedom that just not wanting anything has. So whatever happens like in life, I'm like, oh, I can kind of do that skillfully and play the cards as they will, you know, just so that I can best share. So that's kind of like talking, I guess, from, you know, the experience here and kind of opening up. But like the point is like that's sort of like the thing, because like, I mean, we can come up with all these differences and fabricate them and all that stuff, but like, you know, it's like, and there can be, you know, differences or what have you, but like a lot of this stuff can be fabricated. Like just keep looking, you know, and you know there'll be great fruit, you know, and just like keep looking, because like it's worth it. So like, yeah, it's interesting when it comes to like being a moderate when it comes to like political ideas, right? So, you know, there's the idea of the centrist who's between like the left wing and the right wing, but is that necessarily like the middle? Because it's like, between those like wings, is that necessarily the middle way even the Buddha talks about?
All
Right?
right, let's talk about it then this way. Instead of seeing it as a one-dimensional line with one group reds and the other group blues on the opposite end of this line, and you're someplace in the middle, let's look at it more like a triangle, where A is red and C is blue, and that we're down here at B, far, far away from either one of them. But that's really a good middle path, is one that's nowhere near either one of the extremes.
A triangle. That's on point. I like, yeah.
So, Edward, do you have something to say? You've been here for a while.
Yeah, fascinating point with the triangle. No pun intended. It does have a lot of points. Yeah, good stuff here. I'm just enjoying the vibe more than I have a point to bring up. So, thank you guys. That's all I got to say.
All right. Hey, Vinny, good to see you. Do you have something to add?
Hey, Dhammarato. No, I'm like, I guess like Edward, happy to just sit back on the fence and listen to you guys. It's kind of amusing. The last guy, his interpretation of stuff. So yeah, I'm always happy to just hear you speak, Dhammarato. It's always a pleasure.
Yes. Some of the attitudes and things that we have built up over many, many years is kind of hard to polish the window enough to where we can see through it rather than seeing what's painted on the window.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I actually, to be honest, I find the US Sangha for me, the most difficult to sit through. I don't know what it is. It's always political conversation or the last guy, and it tests me a lot because I get frustrated listening to it, and I'm like, for me, one thing I avoid is the news. I avoid politics. It's something I don't want to get involved in. I don't want to wear it on my sleeve. One of my previous meditation teachers many years ago, he said, turn off the TV, stop listening to the news. Why bother with it? And to be honest, since I've been living in Thailand, I don't listen to the news. I don't listen to the radio. I don't want to know. To be honest, I don't even know who the Prime Minister of Australia is right now. If you ask me, I don't know, because I don't care. That's not of my interest. My interest is controlling the monkey mind and finding a way that makes me a better person each day. And like I said, I really enjoy your videos and listening to you because you bring it very real. And it's a great, you're a great teacher. So thank you.
Moo.
The very testing Sangha, the US. The UK is great. The US is very, no offense to you guys, but yeah, it's a testing
I
one.
didn't
So
notice any difference.
yeah,
Mikey,
for me,
you've been on both of them over and over again. Do you see any inherent differences between the two sanghas?
Well, for Thailand, one's in the morning and one's in the afternoon.
Yeah, one's on Saturday, one's on Sunday, but Vinny seems to see that there's a difference and that the UK is more political.
no,
Go ahead, Vinny.
Not the UK one. The US one is always. I mean, I'm not on every week. I wish I could be, but each time I've jumped on US. Last time I was on the US one, some guy was going nuts about Donald Trump, and then today that guy was going on about some stuff. So it's interesting. When I've been on the UK ones, it seems to be a lot different vibe, and that's what I notice on my few occasions I've been in and out of the sanghas. So yeah, as I said, I'm not, so I really do not enjoy talking politics, anything in that manner. It's something I'm not interested in. I mean, maybe people think I'm wrong. My opinion, does it matter? I don't think it does. But I guess if everyone was like me and didn't vote and didn't do stuff, then maybe it would matter.
What a
But
wonderful world this would be
yeah, exactly.
if people just stopped caring so much about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
almost everyone that I've ever met's already got everything that they need to be happy. And
Yeah.
yet almost everybody that I've ever met still wants a bunch of stuff.
Yes. Unfortunately, yeah, I think it's addiction and desire, isn't it? As you just described earlier about Bitcoin. It's funny because I've been trading this morning or trying to get in and out of the market, and then you're saying we have enough, we don't need Bitcoin. So I'm like, oh no, I'm in the middle of trading. So yeah, it's
You want to get Bitcoin? I'll take it.
Beg your pardon?
If you're looking to get rid of your Bitcoin, I'll be happy to take some.
No. But anyway, yeah. So as Dhammarato said, I'm looking to get rid of my desires more than anything. And he hit the nail on the head. I've been sitting here this morning. I need to make money. I need to make money. Actually, no. I need to let go of the tension that I'm creating in my mind towards making money and go, everything's okay. Everything's fine right now, as Dhammarato puts it.
Mm-hmm.
If Bitcoin goes up, you don't have to do anything. It just goes up by itself. It's like, what? I can't even believe I made money. I didn't do anything. I'm just sitting here in my bed, and all of a sudden, I just made $5,000.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, that's the desire that Dhammarato's talking about. So yeah, yeah, it's all good, all good. Breathing, that's what I'm focusing on, breathing and release. A bit like Mikey when I see him in the chat, closes his eyes and release, letting go of that tension that builds up in the body.
Yeah. Nothing
Chris.
beats chilling out.
Chris, do you have anything to say?
No, I'm just listening. My kids are watching TV, so I'm on mute. Just listening in instead of listening to a recording like I usually do.
Yes, and by the way, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I think in the future people will be getting benefit from that.
I hope so. I get benefit out of it, so might as well share it with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can leave these transcripts that you're doing and these videos that Mikey you're doing. And we can leave that as a legacy, and I can retire and stop doing even an hour a week or 2 hours a week. Just sort of hang out and do nothing really. As I've heard before, the quote, my work is done here. Everything
Dhammarato,
that I've ever had to say, I've said it a dozen times, I bet. So
I do have a
anyway,
question.
Chris.
If you got some answer, that would be cool. I'm trying to understand healthy desires and skillful desires. Because a lot of people on this path just put all desire to the wayside and say that's the issue. But I think we mentioned something about this before.
Yes, I've talked about it before. We can use the word skillful. Another way of mentioning it is wise. To have wise feelings and wise wants. An example of that is, let us say, wanting other people to gain benefit from the Dhamma. That's a wise want. That's the want that the Buddha had. That when he was asked, why are you still teaching? His answer to that was, I teach for future generations. So, Chris and Mikey, that's what you're doing. You're doing it for future generations. That someday Mikey will be gone, but maybe YouTube will still be here. That someday Christopher is going to be gone, but maybe the website will still be here. Who knows? So that's the way of looking at it, is that we don't know what good we're doing, but we do have the wise intention of sharing the Dhamma. You could also have wise intention to help somebody out. If you find someone hungry, we would have a natural opening of the heart to feed them, to give them something nourishing. But in fact, we could say that the point about the physical food and the point about the spiritual food is exactly the same thing. That people are starving, even though they're well fed with food, they're starving for comfort, safety, security. And so this is what the Dhamma will provide. If you can eat the Dhamma, you can become filled and satisfied with the way things are. And so this would be called wise wanting. Now, the other quality of wise wanting is that you may not get what you want, but you do it anyway. In fact, I've had a lot of friends. Hundreds of people have come and gotten great benefit from the Dhamma. But I'm glad that all hundreds and hundreds of them are not on this call. Many of them have gotten what they needed and gone away. Others return on a regular basis. Others of us stay. But that's the whole point is that I'm not looking for having hundreds and hundreds of people to be online every Saturday morning. We'd have a whole lot of work to do. We'd have to go on, Zoom or something like that to accommodate so many people. So I'm satisfied with the group, whatever, that comes online. That's enough to have fun. So that's another kind of wise wanting, is be happy with what we've got.
Yeah.
So, Dhammadas, haven't heard from you.
How's it going?
Turn your camera on. I want to see whether you've got a beard today or not.
I can't turn it on at the moment. It's my kid's here. He needs me, but
So I was thinking about this making money thing in Bitcoin, and I suppose if you do it from the right understanding and you have a desire for a liberation or helping others awaken, and you can see money as a vehicle to help doing that, then it would be a wise desire to go for it.
Yes. If you've got some coins and you're willing to share, you've got enough. But in fact, that's why we have the ability to contribute to Open Sangha Foundation. We're only looking for enough money to keep the foundation open and running, and we've got plenty of money for that. And also, occasionally, we find the situation where someone actually needs some help, and we've provided that. In fact, I've gotten a lot of people that I've supported. And it's still possible that we can support people into the future because we've got enough. And if we don't, I'll put some more in. But I don't have to go out and beg for money because I'm satisfied with what OSF has got.
I'd be happy to contribute anytime, Dhammarato. Let me know.
I just did.
You can DM me with the account details and I'll transfer some money to you. Happy to help.
Right.
I have another monk in Chiang Rai, up near the Burmese border. He goes over into Burma and helps all the Burmese that have been had problems with the military coup thing going on there. So he supports a lot of people in the refugee camps. So I send him money to buy rice and stuff. So happy to do what I can to help. If you, let me know. Always a pleasure to, in this country. We live here and have a great life in Thailand, and it's always good to give back to the ones that need it.
I agree. So, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home?
Yeah, thank you, friends, for being here today. And yeah, speaking of Open Sangha Foundation, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find a link to opensangafoundation.org in the video description. Go there and make an account. And, Dhammarato was just talking about Dana. If you would like to donate, there's a generosity page. But you also really don't have to. There's plenty of things to do. It's a completely free to use site. If you click on the menu, there's a community button, and there you can find our groups. And we've been using the groups lately to talk with one another and post some cool things and comment on other people's things. So yeah, go do that. Play around with the different features of the site. So yeah. And yeah, thank you again, friends. I'm happy to see all of y'all today.
All right. So, does anybody have any last things to say? All right.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Remember to
So,
look.
when this call is over, you can go out and chase whatever skirt that you're looking for.
I wish I was that young.